Quarterback play in 2021 has clearly been below levels of the past few seasons. Curious, outside of the 2019-2020 classes having more talent, which just glancing at the recruiting ranks is true, what do you think is the most important reason that we have seen a drop in play? A few reasons I will throw out there for the debate. Number one, transfer portal issues. Quarterbacks are spending less time in systems. Thus, we see a drop in play. Constantly transfers result in less works for coaches and a drop in play. Number two, COVID development issues. Less time on the field doing work last season. Number three, defenses are catching up to the offensive concepts. And then number four, offensive line play continues to decline, which limits the run game and the pass game concepts, which has simplified the offensive game plans. Or is this all wrong? And is the talent issue in 2021 just a blip?
I will not rule out any of his options as possibilities, but my instinct is that number three is far and away the more important one. Besides the talent issue, like I said, we've gone over many times. It's not just not as talented a class as there is, but I mean, we see this in the sport all the time. An offense does something, it's ahead of the defense finally catches up, and then an offense changes to find the next thing to beat the defense. I think we are seeing defenses kind of catch up to what offenses have been able to do to them, both from a scheme standpoint and putting the plays together and from what rule changes have allowed. And defenses have finally started figuring out ways to counter these changes to not stop them, but at least slow them down a little bit. And I think that and the talent are what having a bigger impact than anything.
Yeah, so we did a little video on this in the preseason. I had Bill Connolly on and talked about the different defenses out there now that are kind of just admitting they don't have the guys to man up, and they're just dropping 8 consistently, right? And I think that is limiting explosiveness, and we're having to see some of these young quarterbacks be more patient than they normally want to be, especially some of these guys that are more of the one read RPO variety. I think that is taking some of that away, or making the read the handoff, and when they get impatient, they pull it probably inappropriately, or like not the correct decision, and then they chuck it into coverage. And I think we're seeing that with some programs out there that are normally pretty explosive on first down, and some of their stuff is just not hitting at quite the rate. Oklahoma is a really good example of that, by the way. Like, they're not nearly as explosive on first down as they normally are, and teams are just saying, "Fine, hand it off, cool. We're just not going to give up the bigs, and we'll play red zone roulette."
Yeah, we saw some of that. It's not just college. Like you talked about the RPO stuff. We saw some of that in the Monday night game with Lamar Jackson. There was an RPO inside the 10, and it was clear if he hands it off, the guy's going to get to the corner and score without any kind of trouble. But Lamar was kind of frustrated with being bottled in by the Colts defense all night, and he held on to the ball and instead got tackled for like a loss of 5 yards. So it's on all levels right now.
I think it's all of you guys have hit on it. The emergence of, the rush 3, drop 8, or, 3-3-5 has become very popular, which only a few teams were running. There's more teams implementing that scheme. And basically all of it's designed to try to counter what offenses are doing. We hear that term chess match, like in games, there's a chess match that goes on. I think there's also the longer, slow playing chess game where, you make a move, you walk away, you come back to your computer, and in a month you make another move. Like that, to me, is what we're seeing unfold now between defenses catching up to the offenses. Because the defense, they see a couple tough moves and they're like, all right, they kind of they buy some time, try not to, just survive this onslaught of offensive football that we've seen. And now we're seeing some of the slow moving pieces, entire off seasons, getting more film on tape, seeing one or two teams have some success, and then you pull some of those philosophies and you implement them in your scheme. So I think that's a big part of it. I also think the question had some outstanding points because we've seen offensive line play struggle. I do think missing for some teams, especially out west, when you look at the Pac-12, what a shell of a season they had with the Big Ten. Ohio State only played 6 games. There are some Big Ten teams that didn't play very many games, and an entire spring. I absolutely think that hurts too. And then you look at the way teams were operating during COVID with the restrictions, where they were trying to teach like this on a Zoom, trying to go to the chalkboard. And there's a human interaction that's lost there in translation with trying to teach things via a screen and not on a walkthrough, even, because there's still value in actually seeing those pieces move around on a field. And then the greatest teacher of all of them is something you lost, valuable thing, and that's reps. Getting either in 3 spring scrimmages, game time, all of those are incredibly valuable for young players who haven't played very much. And then I'll say this, the last thing, and this probably goes to the talent aspect of it. A lot of these guys were overhyped because that's what we do. That's what ESPN does, and that's what magazines do, and websites and everything. We want to sell the stars of the game. So when you hear a guy like DJ Uyunglele or Spencer Rattler's an interesting one because we saw a whole year of him playing really good, and then to see that regression is kind of like, okay, what happened there? But for DJ and for some of the other guys that maybe weren't as big of hits, we probably overhyped them. Like we see it happen all the time. So we just need to slow down a little bit. And it doesn't mean that any of them can't be great again.
I think that I think it's going to take multiple seasons and multiple recruiting cycles for us to hit another point where we feel like we are overwhelmed with quarterback talent at the college game. We're like, wow, look at these 4 or 5 awesome quarterbacks that are all thriving at the same time in different parts of the country, in different conferences. And I think that some of it is a little bit of the pass the chalk chess match, but a lot of it might just be that the game is shifting. Like you go back in your head and you start to realize that most college football seasons don't have the kind of overwhelming talent at the very, very top. And to me, if I can name 5 players or 5 or 6 quarterbacks that are without a doubt just way ahead of everyone else, that is a beefy class of top tier quarterbacks. For the most part, it's only like the 1 or 2 that we're debating because the Heisman, has become a little bit of a quarterback award. Tom has mentioned, if you want to look at the Heisman Trophy this year, maybe the fact that there aren't a whole bunch of quarterbacks right there at the top as a reason to start to look at another position. But I don't think this is going to be something that gets changed immediately. I feel like this is going to take a couple years before we start to see what we saw in the last couple seasons in the college game.